So far in this chapter, I've described how layouts can provide a customized theme throughout all pages of your site, and how individual views can take advantage of those layouts. In this video, I'll explore the layout concept a little bit more and shed some light on just how ASP.NET MVC Razor layouts work. Razor layouts introduce two special concepts: the concept of a page's body and the concept of sections. The page body concept is pretty straightforward. Simply use the render body method to render the contents of the referring view. The section concept has a few nuances, however. The examples I've shown have already introduced you to one of those nuances, the fact that sections can either be required or not. By default, all sections are required, which means, just like it sounds, that referring views must provide a definition for sections in order to use the layout. Conversely, if a section is not required, referring views can either supply a definition for the section or not. It's their choice. Because a section may or may not be defined, Razor provides one more helper method that lets you know whether it is or not, the isSectionDefined method. Just as its name implies, you can use this method to inspect whether a section has been defined in the referring view, and act accordingly. For example, you can use this method to rewrite line 46, the optional scripts section. Here we've wrapped the render section call in an if statement, which checks to see if the section is defined before it's actually rendered. Both of these snippets are effectively the same. They each render the scripts section only if it has been defined by the referring view. Perhaps the most important concept about Razor layouts is that they are really just Razor views with a few special calls to the render body and render section methods. This is important to realize because it means that you can use all of the same functionality of normal ASP.NET MVC views in your layouts. This includes combining code and markup, as well as access to the excellent HTML and URL helpers and the partial view technique that I showed in the previous chapter. This also means that even layouts themselves can refer to other layouts. In order to see how this approach might be useful, consider a site that displays its content in one of several ways. First, let's say that most of the pages in a site use an approach just like the one we've been seeing so far. That is, they've got a header up top and the site's logo and the primary navigation menu, then the content in the middle that takes up the entire width of the page, then a footer section at the bottom. Then, let's say that perhaps there are a bunch of pages in this site that are a bit more advanced and require a sidebar on the left-hand side of the page, perhaps to contain secondary navigation options. Though these pages show their main content a bit differently, they still need to make use of the header and footer from the main layout. The first group of pages, the ones that use the standard layout, are already taken care of with the underscore layout we've already got. So what we need is a layout for the second group of pages, the ones that require a combination of the underscore layout with a sidebar section in which to place their secondary navigation. Luckily, it's pretty easy to make this work. To add the two-column layout, simply right-click on the Shared folder under the Views folder and select the Add View option, just as you would for any normal view. Then give your view a name, say underscore layout with sidebar. Note that the underscore in front of the file's name doesn't actually mean anything to ASP.NET MVC. It is just a naming convention that many people use to indicate that the view is not meant to be rendered by itself, but combined with another view to form a full page. When you create and name your own layouts, you can feel free to use this convention or not. It's up to you. You can accept most of the defaults that the wizard recommends, but instead of accepting the default layout, go ahead and specify that you'd like to use the underscore layout explicitly. To do this, simply click this button and navigate your folder structure to find and select the layout file. Then click OK. Once you've selected the layout, go ahead and click the Add button to create your new view. What Visual Studio generates for you is a normal Razor view. In order to turn it into a layout that other views can reference, we'll need to put a call to render body somewhere in the page. But first, let's create our sidebar structure, keeping in mind that we are replacing the content section of the main layout. We'll also want to apply some CSS styling to this sidebar section, perhaps by adding the following styles to the site.css file in the content folder. Then, we can switch back to the view and place the call to render body within the content div that we've created. And we'll let the content views render content in the sidebar div by using the render section method. Notice how we are not providing the required false parameter that we've seen in our other layouts. That's because if a view selects this layout, we want to make sure that they don't leave the sidebar content empty. Select a view and assign this layout to it using the view's layout property that I showed earlier. Remember to be sure to specify a sidebar section. When you're all done, go ahead and execute the site to see your new layout in action. When we try to run the page, we'll get an error that says sections have been defined but not rendered. This is ASP.NET MVC's way of telling us that we've defined a section in our view that the layout knows nothing about. Why are we getting this error, even though our main layout does indeed define these sections? That's because our new sidebar layout does not define these sections, and section definitions do not carry forward in the way that we want them to. Instead, we need to add some code to our sidebar layout to essentially redefine these sections in our new layout and explicitly pass the content for these sections through to the old layout. Setting the required parameter to false in both of these sections, because I'm not requiring either of them to have content, just as the parent layout does not require them. With this code in place, the sections are passed through to the parent layout, and our page runs fine. In this video, I showed you some more of the advanced features of ASP.NET MVC layouts. You can use these features to reuse layouts throughout your site and create some pretty advanced themes.